The gentlewoman from New York is recognized.
Vicious and spiteful.
I reserve.
Gentlelady reserves her time. The gentleman from Texas, Mr. Sessions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. This time I'd like to yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from California, the chairman, Rules Committee Chairman, the gentleman, Mr. Dreyer.
The gentleman from California is recognized for 3 minutes.
Speaker, I ask I must consider revising and extend my remarks. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to express my appreciation to the distinguished Vice Chairman of the Committee on Rules, our friend from Dallas, Mr. Sessions, for his superb management of this rule. And I'd like to say that as we look at where we're going, contrary to arguments that have been propounded here on the floor, it's important to note that everybody wants to do everything we possibly can to ensure that our fellow Americans have access to the best quality, affordable health care in the world. We have the best health care system in the world. We all know that. We want to make sure that we continue to see that health care system improve. And we've just come to the conclusion that the massive expansion of government is not the answer to the goal of ensuring that people have access to quality health care. The Supreme Court made their decision. We know what the Supreme Court's decision was. I think that decision pointed out a few things. It's a tax. We were told consistently it wasn't a tax, and frankly, if we had been known what the Supreme Court told us about being a tax, I don't believe that we would have had the passage of that measure from the House. And so that decision has been made. And also the Supreme Court, by virtue of determining that it's constitutional, does not mean that it's good public policy. In fact, Chief Justice has made it clear that they're not casting an opinion as to whether or not this is a right measure. I think that most of us have come down on the side of saying that we should have taken an incremental approach in dealing with this. And there are a number of things that if we had done would have, I believe, immediately reduced the cost of health insurance and direct health care costs, Mr. Speaker. They include things like allowing for the purchase of insurance across state lines, things like saying that there should be association health plans, which interestingly enough passed the House, died because of Democrats blocking it in the Senate when my party was last in the majority here. Things like allowing for real meaningful lawsuit abuse reform, which the President of the United States said that he advocated when he was here. And I acknowledge pooling to deal with pre-existing conditions is something that needs to be done. And the fifth point is expanded medical savings accounts, which encourage people to put some dollars aside with a tax incentive to plan for their health care needs. If we'd done those 5 things, Mr. Speaker, and these are proposals that we as Republicans have put forward, and again, as I said, when we were last in the majority, when people on the other side often say that we did nothing, we passed association health plans, which again allow small businesses to pool together, come together, and work to get lower rates as large corporations do. And so it seems to me, Mr. Speaker, that as we look at the challenges that we have, we can make this happen. And the reason that we are casting the vote, as we will today, to repeal is that we need to do that so that we can do this in an open way. Now, I've got to say, some would say this is a closed rule. This is simply an up or down vote on whether or not we should repeal this. When we last considered this measure that we're going to be voting to repeal today, Mr. Speaker, I've got to tell you, it was done under the most closed process that we've ever had for any major measure like this.
For 2 minutes.
Speaker, I thank my friend for yielding. And let me just say that when we did this here, it was done under a process which was unprecedented for an issue of this magnitude. And that closed process, Mr. Speaker, is one of the things that I believe played a role in seeing the Speaker of the House of Representatives, then Nancy Pelosi, have to hand the gavel to John Boehner. The American people understood the fact that things were so closed around here, and I'm very proud and happy that since we've been in the majority, our Rules Committee has reported out bills that have allowed for a structure that has made more amendments considered in the first several months of this Congress than had been considered in the entire last Congress. And so we've tried to work for more openness. And again, a real example of that closed process was what took place in the last Congress. Well, we need to take this measure. We need to repeal it. And I hope very much that some of our colleagues in the other body will agree to that. People always say it's a foregone conclusion what's going to happen. Well, you know what, I mean, I never come to an absolute foregone conclusion. We have our responsibility as members of the House of Representatives to step up to the plate and do what we as a body think is the right thing for us to do, and that's exactly what is going to take place today. So if it doesn't happen, I think that there might be a chance for us next year to do this. And again, Republicans, contrary to what is often said, do want to take steps to ensure that all of our fellow Americans, and we listen to these horror stories, and they are terrible stories of the way people have been treated. That's why I'm a proponent of a structure that will allow for ways to deal with pre-existing conditions. And I believe that we can, in a bipartisan way, since the President advocated it, deal with meaningful lawsuit abuse reform. And again, we need to remember that if we want to keep our nation on the cutting edge of technological development to find a cure for cancer and Alzheimer's and these other ailments, we need to make sure that there's still an incentive for that to take place. And so, Mr. Speaker, with that, I thank my friend for yielding, and I support the rule, and I support our underlying measure, and yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back his time. The gentleman from Texas reserves. The gentlewoman from New York is recognized.
I will continue to reserve.
Gentlewoman reserves. The gentleman from Texas.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Republicans today have brought forth the ideas about why we are repealing the Obamacare health care bill. The process that was gone through has been under wide debate, but the results are factually known and understood. Mr. Speaker, our economy is in shambles. Our economy is in shambles because of uncertainty. Uncertainty in the marketplace about the rules and regulations, not just of health care, but about the impact of big government. And this is the big daddy of all of them. The health care bill is the big daddy that invades every single piece part of not just this country and our society, but because of the way it reaches into individuals and to families, it is very destructive. The IRS will be empowered to hire up to 17,000 new IRS agents to make sure that not only are taxes being paid, but to make sure that the government has its way with people who, even though they may or may not choose to get health care, will be required to by this government. So we well understand what the results are of this bill, and as a result of that, that's why Republicans are on the floor of the House of Representatives today. Mr. Speaker, at this time I'd like to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from New Jersey, the gentleman, Mr. Lobiondo.
The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and appreciate the chairman yielding me some time. I'd like to reemphasize some points that I think probably have already been made, that health care is not a partisan issue. Whether we're Republicans or Democrats or independents, we want to see health care more affordable and more accessible. Unfortunately, President Obama's health care bill does not do the job. The Supreme Court made it completely clear that this is a new tax. With a very fragile economy, the last thing we need to do is impose a new tax on our businesses. In my district, the average unemployment rate is hovering around 13%. I've talked to many of the businesses. The uncertainty of this legislation is killing their incentive to hire new people. It's something that we really shouldn't let happen. And maybe more importantly, I believe that the sacrosanct doctor-patient relationship is jeopardized by the 111 new boards and commissions that will put cost before care. This is something that we cannot allow to happen. The best way to do it is for a total repeal, to start over with the points that will make sense, that most of America could get their arms around, that the medical community will say will help the doctor-patient relationship, and businesses will have a clear understanding. I yield back. Thank you for the time.
The gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Lobiondo, yields back his time. The gentleman from Texas reserves. The gentlewoman from New York.
May I inquire of my colleague if he has further speakers?
At this time, I'd like to inquire upon the Speaker how much time remains on both sides.
The gentlewoman from New York has 1 minute and 50 seconds remaining. And the gentleman from Texas has 3 minutes remaining.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I would, if the gentleman would like me to, I'll go ahead and make our closing statement at this time. I have no further.
I am prepared to close.
I'm sorry. I have the right to close. I have no further speakers at this time.
Gentleman from Texas reserves. The gentlewoman from New York is recognized.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, presidents from both sides of the aisle have tried to do some health care in the United States for 100 years. And finally, 2 years ago, we were able to achieve the goal. Today, we vote on a bill that would dismantle that achievement for political points only, because the 31st time is not going to be charm here. You know, we have heard again the dire straits of this country. Please ask your member of Congress why it is that we're voting on this for the 31st time instead of doing something about jobs, for heaven's sakes. You have heard, I've not heard anything in that bill or anyplace else that 17,000 IRS agents are going to be hired. I think that's, again, something that we really don't know about. But I would like to ask unanimous consent, if the previous question is defeated, to insert the text of the amendment of Mr. Pasquarello talked about along with the extraneous material immediately prior to the vote on the previous question. And I urge my colleagues to vote no and defeat the previous question, urge a no vote on the rule, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlewoman from New York yields back her time. The gentleman from Texas, Mr. Sessions, is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much, and I appreciate the gentlewoman from New York not only for her indulgence of this issue the past few days, but also for her professional nature today. Mr. Speaker, we're on the floor because the health care bill that the President and House Democrats and Senate Democrats supported cost twice as much 1 year later as it was guesstimated the year before. The United States is suffering economically. People are suffering economically, and we are losing our competitiveness with the world. We are here because the biggest driver of what I would consider to be not just a lack of jobs in this country, but also continued uncertainty for the business community. Someone called them corporations, are really employers. Employers across this country are saying to members of Congress, not just in sworn testimony, but in media after media, newspaper after newspaper, that it is uncertainty related to the health care bill that is causing them not to move forward on their plans to grow their business. We are here today because we need to make sure that we also understand the cost that is twice as much in 1 year as it was guesstimated to be in the year before. This cost of and doubling this would mean that this body either needs to come up with a way to pay for it, which would mean, following the Democrats' proposal, instead of taking $500 billion out of Medicare, we would take $1 trillion out of Medicare. Instead of raising taxes $570 billion, we would have to raise taxes $1 trillion. Instead of all these things that the bill does that taxes people, instead of it being exactly the way they said it would be, including $70 billion for a plan for long-term care that now they cannot sustain, it would have to be $140 billion. Mr. Speaker, the American people do understand that health care is important, and Republicans would insist upon us following, just as we have in the past, health care bills which would better the marketplace and people who would have the ability to purchase health care at an affordable amount, and to make sure that we have physicians and patients that have a close relationship. Please make no mistake about it, tort reform would be at the top of our order. Secondly, buying insurance across state lines would ensure that a marketplace, a healthy marketplace exists. Number third, 26-year-olds being on their parents' insurance, that's a bipartisan idea. High-risk pools to help spread out the cost would become available. We're for those too. And certainly associated health care plans that are able to pool their resources so that they could have a bigger team size in which to purchase health care would be important. But more importantly, we need to make sure that every single American gets health care on a pre-tax basis. We've made our case today, Mr. Speaker. I'm very proud of what we're doing. I urge my colleagues to vote for the rule in the underlying bill, and at this time I yield back the balance of my time and to move the previous question.
Gentleman yields back his time. All debate has ended. The question is on order, and the previous question on the resolution. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I
Woman from
request
New
the
York.
yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. Pursuant to Clause 8 and Clause 9 of Rule 20, this is a 15-minute vote on ordering the previous question, and it will be followed by 5-minute votes on adopting the resolution if ordered and agreeing to the Speaker's approval of the journal. This is a 15-minute vote.
Just about 2 weeks ago, the Supreme Court upheld the 2010 Affordable Care Act passed by Congress. The Republican leaders shortly thereafter said that they would schedule another attempt at repealing the health care law. And today, the beginning of that attempt. This is the end of the rule debate and a vote here on the previous question. Democrats urging their members to vote no on the previous question so that Louise Slaughter can offer her amendment to the rule allowing for consideration of Representative Pascrell's jobs bill. This is a 15-minute vote followed by a vote on the rule. The vote on the rule itself would allow for 5 hours of general debate on the repeal bill. It'll be broken down by House Committee, Energy and Commerce, Ways and Means, Education and the Workforce, Budget, Judiciary, and Small Business. As you can see on your screen, we're opening up our phone lines to get your thoughts on health care. In particular, the Facebook question we're asking this afternoon, too, is do you support or oppose the repeal of the health care law? Democrats, the number to call is 202-585-3885. Republicans, it's 202-585-3886. Independents and others, 202-585-3887. If you don't want to call in, just want to comment on Facebook or cast your vote, you can go to facebook.com/cspan. We will get to your phone calls momentarily, but lots of debate ahead, and for further details on what's in the repeal, we spoke to a Capitol Hill reporter. Todd Zwillich from the takeaway from WNYC and PRI. Why are House Republicans determined to repeal President Obama's health care law?
Well, it's a key election plank for Republicans. They've been fighting against the Affordable Care Act since before it was passed. They've fought against it since Republicans took control of the House last year, and they fought for a Supreme Court decision that would have repealed the law. Now, that last effort, of course, failed. We all covered it in the last couple of weeks. But even after this Supreme Court decision, which to many people here on the Hill was a surprise, upholding the individual mandate and most of the Affordable Care Act, Republicans turned right around and said we're still going for full repeal, even if John Roberts and the majority on the court thinks that the individual mandate is constitutional. We still think it's horrible policy. We think it's a job killer, a government overreach. The list goes on. And they want their members to reaffirm their position of full opposition to the president's key domestic agenda item, and that's why they're doing it. Democrats, on the other hand, are turning right around and saying Republicans are now living in the past. They're not talking about jobs. They're talking about an item that they've lost on. The Supreme Court has ruled against them. One of their guys, Chief Justice John Roberts, has ruled against them. The law is unconstitutional. In a word, get over it. You lost. And you're not talking about important things like jobs in the middle class, which President Obama has started talking about again this week, or at least the middle class. He's not talking much about jobs. So Republicans want to get on record again. Incidentally, this is the second full repeal that Republicans in the House will be voting for. They voted a full repeal when they took control of the House last year, but they've had about 30 other votes dismantling parts of this bill, funding mechanisms, regulations, pulling different threads on the Affordable Care Act. So Republicans have been voting against the Affordable Care Act over and over and over for the last 2 years, and this is maybe a bookend, yet another page.
And Democrats have indicated so far, have they been keeping count of that? 31 times they've attempted to repeal. What's important about that number? Why do they keep emphasizing that?
Well, Democrats are emphasizing it because they want to make it seem like Republicans are beating a dead horse, that they keep coming at this issue over and over and over again, even after, in this case, the Supreme Court has ruled against them. They want to make the point that the president spent a lot of political capital, a lot of energy on giving 30 million Americans health care who didn't have it before, reining in insurance companies who were running roughshod over the insurance market, and improving parts of Medicare, the Medicare prescription donut hole that makes seniors pay a lot of their drug costs after a certain amount. This bill closes that down. Democrats have been critical of themselves over the last couple of years for not doing a better job of selling the merits of this bill. They've gotten a little better on that over the last few months, and they keep track of that 31 number to make it, well, maybe to give the impression that Republicans are so unilaterally focused, singularly focused on opposing President Obama, even when he's trying to help the middle class, that they're beating their heads against the wall here and they won't focus on the big picture.
Well, that said, reports indicate that a number of Democratic members will vote in favor of the repeal. Who are they, and why would they vote against their party?
Well, that's true, and there are a lot of swing districts and some conservative states where you will see Democrats voting for repeal. The one part we should say is that full repeal does have a fair amount of support. The polls are a little bit all over the place on this, but anywhere between 35 and 45% of the public says they want full repeal. It depends on how you ask the question, because if you ask those same people a different question, do you like individual constituent parts of this bill, they also say yes. So it's a little bit confusing. However, you asked which members. Keep your eyes on people like Kissel from North Carolina, a Democrat, Dan Bourne of Oklahoma, Mike Ross of Arkansas, conservative Democrats in conservative states who would like to take this opportunity to yet again untether themselves from the president and his agenda. Always keep in mind, in party politics, sometimes you can get burdened by your party's program to say, well, Democrats are for a bill that a lot of people don't like, therefore if you're a Democrat, you're vulnerable. But it can cut the other way as well. It can give a Democrat like Dan Bourne, who's a conservative Democrat in a conservative state, or Mike Ross, who's a blue dog Democrat, give them an opportunity to say, I'm not in the president's pocket, I don't agree with him on everything, to vote against him and maybe bolster themselves with conservative Democrats and independents back home.
Todd Zwillich of The Takeaway from WNYC and PRI, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
And on the House floor, this is the previous question vote before the vote on the rule for debate for the repeal of health care. The rule would allow for no amendments, but 5 hours of general debate, most of which will happen today, we understand, and will wrap up tomorrow. The final vote is expected tomorrow. We're opening up our phone lines, also Facebook.com/C-SPAN. The question, do you support or oppose the repeal of the 2010 health care law? Over 240 votes so far, 142 opposing the repeal and 98 supporting the appeal. Let's go to our Democrats line first. Stephen is in Highland, Indiana. Go ahead.
Hello.
You're on the air.
Yeah, I just feel that this health care bill is wrong. They're shoving things down the American's throat. When they passed it and Nancy Pelosi's sitting there smiling, saying, oh, well, you know, this is the best thing for America. No, it's not. Granted, I've got good insurance, but these people, the Republicans and Democrats, they're trying to solve something that, in my opinion, it's easy to solve. You leave the kids on the parents' insurance policy until they're 25, 26. You mandate that the insurance companies can pass the bill for insurance companies for pre-existing conditions, and other than that, that's it. That's all you got to do.
Let's go to Shawnee, Oklahoma, Republican line. Patrick.
Yeah, I completely repealed, and I'll tell you why. No one talks about this. Of course, the taxes are going to skyrocket all the small businesses. A lot of them said they're going to go bankrupt. But here's the biggest reason I've always been against the way it was written. You think Mexicans were coming across the border before? I have family members that lived in Houston, and they work for trucking outfits. And a lot of Mexican and Spanish saying, man, they just wait. They can get all these free benefits. They can't get none of that in Mexico. Guess where they're all coming to the millions as soon as 214 hits? Think about it. Think about it, folks. There's no fence. If you're in squalor and you've got 5 kids, guess where you're heading? Right to the U.S. border to get free health care.
And
that's why I'm
Patrick,
really against
you've heard
it.
this from your relatives who said this?
Yes, I have. They talk to Mexicans. A lot of them are truck drivers, and they can't wait because they want to come right over with their wives and their kids and get all free. You better believe it. They're going to be coming by the millions.
Let's go to Tony, who's on our independent line in Indianapolis.
Hi.
Hey there, Tony.
Thanks for taking my call. I agree with my fellow Hoosier a couple phone calls ago. I am definitely opposed to the Obamacare bill. They're taking $500 billion out of Medicare, which I am a retired person. They didn't want to talk about it. Every time the Republicans brought up about the cost, the Democrats didn't want to talk about that. I wouldn't talk about it either if it's costing the American public what it is. And I hope if they don't pass it time, do it 31 more times, do it 100 more times, whatever it takes. Let's get rid of the over-costing bill.
Of course, the Republicans' first attempt was right out of the chute in early 2010, in early 2011, at the beginning of the 112th, with H.R. 2, the first full repeal that they tried in January of 2011. The big question is whether the Senate will take it up. C-SPAN Capitol Hill producer Annie Ten tweets that Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell says he thinks it's appropriate to have another vote in the Senate to repeal President Obama's health care law. Dustin is a Democrat in Columbus, Ohio. Dustin, make sure you mute your television or radio and go ahead with your comments.
Okay. I just really think it's absolutely ridiculous that, you know, we've gone over this 30 times now, and there are just so many other issues that are pressing that we could be following through with, that we could be discussing and debating. This is obviously something that has touched a nerve, but it's obviously it's something that needs to happen to move forward. There are countries over in Europe that are so much more progressive than America is, and their total income tax is, you know, up 75%. Now, what happens is that a lot of people are feeling like it's taking away their money, but they still have their 25% to do whatever they want. The taxes will cover education, they'll cover health care, they'll cover everything that every human needs for that nation, but they still have, you know, their money to buy what they want. And I don't understand why people are so selfish that they're willing to hold on to every penny that they make when they're going to go ahead and make that decision with it anyway. I feel like there are a lot of pressing matters that we can deal with other than this health care. I feel like it's a great thing to do. I'm 22 and I'm in college, and I'm actually going to separate myself from my mother's health care because she can't afford it, and I'm going to be venturing on my own and exploring my own options.
Have you started that? Have you been able to figure out how much that's going to cost you as a 22-year-old?
Well, I have found a job, and it's unionized, and through the union, full health care benefits are only going to cost me $5 a week.
What kind of work is it?
It's at a warehouse.
Dustin, thanks for weighing in. Folks are also posting on Facebook, or our poll is up. Do you support or oppose the repeal of the 2010 health care law? 157 opposing the repeal, and so far 124 in support of the repeal. Richfield, Connecticut, it's Jake on our Republican line. Jake, go ahead with your thoughts.
Yeah, I absolutely believe that this bill should be repealed immediately. You know, it raises taxes. I'm a fiscal conservative and I'm an ideological conservative at heart. Okay, and this bill is just blatantly unconstitutional. And I have no support for this bill, and I'm ashamed that my representative voted for it, and he will most likely vote against this repeal. And I'm ashamed of that.
Who's your representative?
Representative Jim Hyman, Connecticut's 4th.
Congress passed the health care law in 2010. The Supreme Court less than 2 weeks ago upheld most of the law. Next up is Benton, Kentucky, and Ronnie is on the Independence line. Ronnie, make sure you mute your television and go ahead with your thoughts.
Yeah, well, my thought is I'm not saying I'm either for it nor against it, but I am saying that I hear them talk about wasting a lot of money in the Congress. You know, just so much waste. They need to cut down the debt, but yet they go ahead and go over this debate again over the health care bill, wasting time when time could be spent on some type of jobs bill and bridges and things of that nature. And it's just wait till after the election to see if Mr. Romney gets in, then let them see what happens then. But to do it now is just for show, and it just seems to me it's a lot of hatred in Congress now that I've never seen before in the past. But it's just so ridiculous. And they call each other gentlemen, you know, in the microphone, but under their lips they just full of hatred, and I don't like it. And I would like to see term limits and a lot of them gone. And I thank you.
Richard Cohen of Congressional Quarterly writes this afternoon that House Republican leaders contend their plan to repeal the Affordable Care Act is a political winner. Quote, "It's not just Republicans working to repeal Obamacare," said Majority Whip Kevin McCarthy. He writes that Republican lawmakers acknowledge that simply repealing the law will not be a sufficient long-term response to public unhappiness with the health care system. More thoughts now from Brandon, Florida, and then this is Don on our Democrats line.
Well?
Don, welcome to the conversation.
Thank you. Yeah, am I okay to go now?
It sure is, yeah.
All right, thanks. Hey, yeah, what I would like to say is I really don't think this, I think the real issue with this government mandate that's imposed upon people, okay, first of all, was a Republican idea by the Heritage Foundation. I truly believe that this whole discussion and this thing going on is just completely to go against Obama. When he was elected into office, these people made a pledge. So anything, you can see any bill that comes before that Obama leads, the Republicans are together and they stick together, unlike the Democrats, to just go against no matter what it is. You know, a lot of these ideas in this health care are Republican ideas. As you just heard, some of them were mentioned during the speeches by these Congress people, okay? I just think it's just a political stance just to get Obama. And I'm a white American, okay? I'm not racial at all. But I hate to say this, but the truth is I live in the South, and I'm going to be up front with you and say, you know, I hear people talk. I have friends, associates. And believe me, this is more of a race issue than people know. People just don't want to say that and admit it. You know, we have the first black president, and, you know, there's a lot of people that will never accept that and not like it.
A couple more calls on health care. The House is voting on the previous question. The rule vote is next. It'll be a 5-minute vote, and that rule will allow for 5 hours of general debate on repeal of the health care law. Most of that will happen today. Final passage expected tomorrow. So far on our Facebook page, the vote to oppose the repeal is ahead 174 to 143. Warren, Michigan, hello to Joyce on our Independence line.
Yes.
Hi, Joyce.
Hi. Oh, am I on the air? I'm
You
sorry.
are, yes.
I don't understand what the big hubbub is. I have 2 degrees in nursing. I'm in my 60s. I'm retired. I know of 2 people that died as a direct result of not being able to get health care. One was an elderly woman that didn't have any insurance because she was below Social Security age. Another one was a gentleman who was a carpenter, self-employed, and didn't have any. When they talk about the cost of it, don't they understand that 80% of the dollars that are paid into the system with this bill, must be paid out in benefits? There's only 20% that can be paid for staffing and the CEOs and the COOs. I just don't understand. I don't understand as a nurse. I don't understand as a Christian. I want my neighbor to have insurance. And I don't understand why this argument just keeps going on and on.
Joyce, you still working as a nurse?
Yes. No, I'm not still working right now, but I have.
Thanks for your call. Norfolk, Virginia, next up, Democratic line, and Lawrence. Go ahead. Norfolk, Virginia.
Yes, hi then. I was listening to some of my constituents. As a matter of fact, I'm a retired military person.
Mm-hmm.
I'm listening to all the questions and all the outrage about the Health Care Act. And as a military person, I would ask, why was there was no outrage when we went to a war with Iraq? We didn't ask about the money. We didn't ask about the cost. Now we're saying, hey, it costs too much. We have to go back and ask ourselves. And that's why Republicans get such a bad line, because everything is more important. Money is more important than lives. We got to remember, we lost 4,000 lives, and there was no outrage. But we're outraged about a health care law. So we have to put everything in a broad context and look at it from a realistic people's point of view.
Let's go to our Republican line next. Pennifield, Illinois. This is Lily. Lily, you're on the air.
Hi.
Oh, I lost Lily. Lily, I apologize about that. We'll go to Patty, who is on our Republican line in Heartland, Wisconsin. Heartland, Wisconsin. Are you there?
Yes, I am.
Hi.
Hi.
Go ahead with your comments.
Yes, I'd just like to say that I'm 100% for repealing the health care law, and that I think the Democrats really need to realize that the majority of the people are against this law, and it doesn't have anything to do with Obama. It has to do with all the negatives in the bill, and all the and they also need to realize that once the law no longer is the way that it was set up, and it will actually hurt the lower income people much more than what they really are considering anymore. There are people that can't afford to pay a tax on anything, and they're going to be penalized and they can't actually afford much of anything anymore.
Patty, has the new health care law affected you personally?
I have a son that was on it. Because we have health insurance, he was on it.
So he's under 26 then?
Yes, yes. And but that is something that the Republicans are going to put in and help try to push forward. If they can get this repealed again, it would be a much better situation not to have this huge deficit over our head and do it in smaller portions.
Patty, thanks for your thoughts. One more call here. Last word, Lakewood, New Jersey. It's Joseph on our Democrats line.
Yes.
Joseph, welcome. Go ahead.
All right, thank you. My thought is that in watching everything, I've realized that I'm seeing a lot of racism in this situation, and even though I've looked extensively at the health care bill, there are many good things in it, and there are some things that are not good. But it's a step in the right direction, and I really believe that in time, certain things can be changed in it so that it will benefit everybody as a whole. But if we don't start moving in the proper direction, we'll lose out.
You reflect some of the thoughts of an earlier caller. So in the effort to repeal it itself, you're seeing some racist motivation? Is that correct?
Yes. I mean, everything that the president is doing, people are shooting it down. But he says if we don't build up the country, our country, then we lose.
Thank you, Joseph. Thanks for all the calls. And don't forget, you can weigh in on our Facebook page, facebook.com/cspan, if you support or oppose the repeal of the 2010 law. This is the previous question vote. They'll vote on the rule next. And if that passes ahead, there will be 5 hours of general debate, most of which will be likely done today. Vote on final passage will happen on Wednesday.
On this vote,
Ms. Brown of Florida votes no. Mr. Franks of Arizona. Mr. Franks of Arizona votes aye. Mr. Reyes. Mr. Reyes votes no. Mr. Reed. Mr. Reed votes aye. Ms. DeLauro. Ms. DeLauro votes no. Mrs. McMorris Rogers. Mrs. McMorris Rogers votes aye.
On this vote, the yeas are 238, the nays are 184. With 0 answering present, the previous question is ordered. The question is on adoption of the resolution. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Gentlewoman from New York.
Mr. Speaker, I request the yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote.
This is the vote on the rule for debate for the bill that would repeal the 2010 health care law. If it passes, there will be 5 hours of general debate that will proceed in the following order, with members representing the Energy and Commerce Committee, Ways and Means, Education and the Workforce, Budget, Judiciary, and Small Business. We expect that they'll get through most of the general debate today, a little bit tomorrow, and final passage of the repeal is set for tomorrow. There may be one more recorded vote after this. That is a vote on the journal, but it's also quite possible they'll voice vote that instead.
nays are 182. The resolution is adopted. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the unfinished business is the question on agreeing to the Speaker's approval of the Journal, on which the yeas and nays were ordered. The question is on agreeing to the Speaker's approval of the Journal. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote.
The last vote in this series, approval of the Journal. Just moments ago, they approved the rule for debate for the bill that would repeal the 2010 Affordable Care Act, the health care law. The rule provides for 5 hours of general debate. That'll get underway shortly and will continue through much of the afternoon, wrapping up sometime tomorrow with final passage vote scheduled.
312. The nays are 105. With 3 answering present, the journal stands approved. House will come to order. The House will come to order. The House will come to order. Members take their conversations off the floor. The House will be in order. Members take their conversations off the floor. For what purpose does the gentleman from Idaho seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I present a privileged report for printing under the rule.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Report to accompany H.R. 6091, a bill making appropriations for the Department of the Interior, Environment, and related agencies for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2013, and for other purposes.
Referred to the Union calendar and ordered printed pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 21, points of order are reserved. The House will be in order. Remove conversations from the floor. For what purpose does the gentleman from Michigan rise?
Mr. Speaker, pursuant to H.Res. 724, I call up the bill H.R. 6079, the repeal of Obamacare Act, and ask for its immediate consideration. And I would ask for regular order.
Members take their conversations off the floor. The House will be in order. The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 6079, a bill to repeal the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act and health care-related provisions in the Health Care and Education Reconciliation Act of 2010.
Pursuant to House Resolution 724, the bill is considered read. The bill shall be debatable for 5 hours, with 30 minutes equally divided and controlled by the Majority Leader and Minority Leader or their designees. 60 minutes equally divided and controlled by the Chair and Ranking Minority Member of the Committee on Education and the Workforce. 60 minutes equally divided and controlled by the Chair and Ranking Minority Member of the Committee on Energy and Commerce. 60 minutes equally divided and controlled by the Chair and Ranking Member of the Committee on Ways and Means. 30 minutes equally divided and controlled by the Chair and Ranking Minority Member on the Committee of the Budget. 30 minutes equally divided and controlled by the Chair and Ranking Minority Member of the Committee on the Judiciary. 30 minutes equally divided and controlled by the Chair and Ranking Minority Member of the Committee on Small Business. The Chair recognizes the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Upton.
Mr. Speaker, I would ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and to include extraneous material on H.R. 6079.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, I would yield myself 3 minutes.
The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Upton, is recognized for 3 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, House Republicans promised the American people that if granted the majority, we would vote to repeal the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, better known as Obamacare. Let's face it, Obamacare is nothing like what was promised. Former Speaker Pelosi said we would have to pass the bill to find out what was in it, and she assured we found out. Rather than reform health care, this law epitomizes Washington at its very worst. Intrusive mandates, higher costs, red tape, unaffordable spending, taxes on employers and families, and control of personal health care decisions by boards bureaus, and agencies in Washington. Let's just consider the many broken promises. President Obama promised that his reforms would lower family premiums by $2,500 by the end of his first term. Yet the cost of an employee-sponsored family plan has increased to $15,000 in 2011. And CBO projects that if we allow the rest of Obamacare's mandates to kick in, premiums rise further. The President told us over and over that if you liked your health care plan, you could keep it. Yet the law pushes employers to drop coverage. CBO estimates that up to 20 million American workers will lose their plan under Obamacare. The President said his law would cost a mere $900 billion, as if spending nearly $1 trillion on a new program was thrifty. Yet when it's fully implemented, Obamacare is estimated to cost taxpayers $2.6 trillion over a decade. The President promised to make Medicare stronger. Instead, Obamacare raided $575 billion from Medicare to pay for new programs and entitlement expansions. The President pledged that he would not raise taxes for households with incomes under $250,000. Yet, Obamacare includes 21 new tax increases that will cost taxpayers roughly $800 billion over the next decade. The IRS will impose new taxes on medical devices, prescription drugs, health coverage, high-premium health plans. The agency will place new restrictions on health savings accounts and flexible spending accounts. Employers will face a tax for failing to provide health plans approved by HHS and a new surtax on investment. The President promised American taxpayers that they would not be forced to fund abortions and our conscience rights would be protected. Yet HHS is moving forward with a mandate that requires religious institutions to violate their principles or pay a steep fine. Or is the fine on faith going to be considered a tax as well, just like the individual mandate? The Supreme Court made clear that the mandate is a massive new tax, one that will primarily be levied on middle-class households. Repeal is also the only way to honor and restore the promises the President wisely made but foolishly broke. The Supreme Court rendered its diagnosis, but the American people will be offering a second opinion. For now, we promised the American people that we would work to repeal this terrible law, and that is a promise we are keeping.
The gentleman from Michigan reserves his time. The gentleman from California, Mr. Waxman, is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself 3 minutes.
The gentleman is recognized.